Thanks for checking out Hoops Hitting Gems. This is David Jones. I'm your host. Episode number 21. Thank you guys for checking us out as usual. It's been a fun-filled weekend. We had GHSA come, and as you know, Georgia had 44 teams come from Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, as well as Alabama. And it looks like high school basketball is back. 144 coaches showed up. So it was definitely a joy to see that happen. We got a great show tonight. We got Coach Williams coming on from Fort Valley State's women's program. She's the head coach.
Yep.
Kind of near and dear to my heart for my Pittsburgh people. She graduated
Yes.
from Edinboro High School, and we were backstage talking about a number of people that we both know that went to school with her that I also played with as well. How you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
I'm doing pretty good, pretty good. So you've been down at Fort Valley State for how long?
We're starting our third year.
A third year. And the SIC, did you play last year or not?
We officially did not. They
Okay.
granted us the ability to play independently if our schools would allow it, just because the SIAC conference is across multiple state lines. So you get as north as
Mm-hmm.
Ohio. So we're like
Yes.
out of Ohio, and as
Okay.
south is us in Georgia, and then we get over to Alabama, and then South
Mm-hmm.
Carolina. So you had different state rules, and people were at the stages of COVID at that time. So the conference decided not to host having a season, but
Okay.
they allowed us to play. And so if your school is able to play, we played in February. So we put all 11
Okay.
games in February. So it was
Okay.
jam packed. And like you said, it was kind
Okay.
of last minute. We were waiting and waiting, thought we'd be able to play. Then word came down, no. And they're like, if you can do it in February, do it in February. We're like, okay. So we did.
Okay.
We were able to put 12 games together. So we're excited about that.
Okay. So did you have any seniors that are electing to come back for this year?
No, I am in the fortunate position that we did a lot
Okay.
of recruiting last year,
Okay.
and we had no seniors. We have all juniors, sophomores, freshmen, and then we had the impact of bringing in 3 more kids this past spring to add to our
Okay.
team. So we're excited.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
we return everybody, and everybody wants
it's
that extra year.
definitely, and everybody's going to take that extra year, I assume.
Mhm.
So you guys are still kind of young then. So there'll be no seniors this year as well.
Yep, correct. They just get to rack up some of those GPA points and take care
Okay.
of some classes because we were in class the whole time. Our school did a phenomenal job
Okay.
with safety, but brought kids back to school. You could do hybrid, online or in person. So August 1, they were here, and our
Okay.
whole team was actually here and working out. And then we were waiting to see what the SIAC was going to do with their ruling and seeing what the safety guidelines were. So it all worked out well, and we were able to survive and do some things. So it's a good experience for everybody.
Good. Good. So also, you're letting me know that you're pretty much signed up until 2022, 2023, right?
Exactly. They're hard to come by. We're not fully funded. We get creative with how we package people in different scholarships. For
Okay.
people who don't know, Fort Valley is a land-based grant institution, and what we like about it is we do have tons of land, and we have huge agricultural program. So there's
Okay.
another avenue if you want to study those sciences, which is also family science or business. We have that agricultural business degree. So those are fully funded through a different grant process. So we utilize a lot of that. A lot of people are doing those things, and a #1 veterinary school in the South here for who we recruit. So we get creative with using our academic money to match some of our athletic money.
Okay. And I want to touch on that. So you're more of okay, that lets me know grades are pertinent for you to be able to get some of that academic money, correct?
Yes, our team GPA, we hover around a 3.0, which
Okay.
was phenomenal of who we bring in, who we retain, and who we look for, so they can, excel at our classes. They don't struggle as much. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to have that good base is what we look for because we're a competitive Division II program.
Okay.
And we haven't been recently, but that's why I was brought in to get us back to the postseason. And that is the goal. So you got to have those kids that can handle basketball and academics at the same time, and that time management and everything. So some of them did
Good.
well with the online structure. A lot of them want to get back in the classroom with teachers. But it's been a good hybrid, and the 3 kids we brought in will just add to our reputation and what we look like.
Sounds good. So I still wanted to touch on the academic piece as well as the scholarship. And I want our listeners to hear this. And yes, grades are important and it makes it more attractive when I can come to you and say, okay, I can get partial academic money, I'm a full Pell, and I can get some of that Hope money too,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes, exactly. We love those
Ex-
Georgia girls. Yes.
Okay, for our listeners, I can't preach enough how important and more attractive and more recruitable you are when you can come with that package. Now, I understand some of that is need based, but when you can come with that package, and I can say, "Hey, coach, I'm full Pell, I'm a 3.5 and above, I'm a Hope Scholarship recipient." You would take that person over somebody that needs full money, correct?
It's just a no brainer. You're trying to put a team together of close to 15 for a roster to be
Mm-hmm.
competitive. Fully funded for Division II, if people don't know, is 10 full scholarships. We're
Mm-hmm.
state school, so we do look for Georgia with the Hope money. If you're Pale, we use that towards your schooling and classes. So a lot of it's not pocketed. We may lose kids to that, or if they're we do recruit borderline Division I kids. So you have that where they're trying to see if they're going to get that stipend at that level. But that's who we recruit. That's how we package it. A lot of people are on partial athletic money or not a full athletic scholarship. Love to have them on campus. So we find creative ways that way. But it does help us. It does narrow our focus. We do like in-state kids. You're getting a great education. And kind of like anywhere, if you're out of state, you have to be twice as good because it's going to be twice the money. So especially this past year, whew, brutal. But we have 3 scholarships is what's on paper, and we divide that among them and get creative. And a lot of kids want to come play on our campus, in our arena, in our league. So that does help. It's attractive for them in that package and what they're looking for.
Well, let me ask you this. So, one of the things that's interesting about this, this year has been beyond COVID, the transfer portal. Have you been in that portal looking as well?
Oh, you're always looking. There's so many phenomenal players in the portal. And
Hmm.
crazy thing is, it's just coaching change. And so they go in the portal. And
Yes.
there were over 75 coaching changes on the women's side. So you
Yeah.
have people who didn't play, people who thought they should have played, coaching change. My coach left. Not years ago, probably about 3 years ago, you had kids who transferred up. So you'd play at a low major, maybe Division I, and then now all of a sudden, uh, whew, like a Conference USA is looking at you to transfer up. So it was just a different world, and you got to be on your game.
Yeah.
It's available, and then part of it is I think for myself and what we've looked at is if they transfer to us, those classes have to slide in somewhere on the spectrum of if you have 2 years left or 3 years left. Most schools you have to have either 12 to 15, 30 credits to get that degree your last year.
Hmm.
Um, and then if you're that graduate transfer, you already have your degree, but looking to play some more, you have a year left. You got to match up with something in our graduate programs, which is more like our sciences, which we do well, veterinary, which we do well, but you have to get into our, or any school's graduate school. So that's the
Yeah.
other part that kids don't understand. And there are a lot of kids in this high school graduating class that are going to have to, I think, probably end up at junior college to be placed for 2 years and then get back into a regular cycle. But yeah, it's been a little crazy. And with everybody retaining years of eligibility this year, it was just good for our kids to get their feet wet and play collegiately. We already played a Division I team as an exhibition, so that
Okay.
was huge for them to get that experience. But yeah, it's we retained everybody, we won them around again, so we're excited.
And now I got a good question for you. So, how does it look? How from a women's perspective, post grad is just starting to really pop up. Have you started looking at post grad? I know you look at JUCO players, but are
Mhm.
are you starting to really look at post grad? It's not quite there on the women's side, but it's coming. It's like on the verge, so to
Yeah,
speak.
it's definitely an option. But again,
Hmm.
you just have to make sure you're at schools. And generally, I would say it's easier for bigger schools because I have bigger choices of post grad degrees. Here, again, it's going to be your sciences, your veterinary, sometimes a business one. 10, 15 years ago, it was either nursing or business. And if you weren't anything under that undergrad
Yes.
umbrella, it's kind of hard to like, okay, what am
Yeah.
I getting my master's in? But definitely students and women are looking at that. It's another option, but again, you want to have them graduate and have a good last experience on your campus. So what's the match? Is it going to be more frustrating just because they're playing, but then they're not even close to getting that master's degree? So those are the things that we take into account here at Fort Valley and what I've done in the past to make sure that they're the most happy alumni, your most recent alumni, that then want to be involved with the program beyond graduating.
Gotcha. So, do you take once your kids graduate, would you consider them for grad assistant positions as well?
I would. We just don't have that opportunity here at Fort Valley on the women's side. I have a full time, full pay assistant coach. So I'm very happy with that. She's
Okay.
done a great job. She's actually picked up some classes to teach just to help supplement her income because we were not allowed to do camps. And that's one of the things that as a head coach, you have the assistant run the camp or work camps to be able to make that extra money. But it would be if that was a position that we offered. But we're a smaller school. The two of us can get it done. So we're happy.
So Fort Valley, you're not allowed to do any elite camps, so to speak.
Because of COVID,
Oh,
everything
because
is
of COVID.
still
Okay,
under the COVID umbrella, even though
gotcha.
we were a testing site. We all got our vaccinations here. Our school, Fort Valley, does a great job reaching out in the community for people who don't know. We are a hub of southern, middle Georgia of providing other things for the community, and that's huge.
Okay,
So besides just what we do with voting spots and people into town and understanding it and how you really give back to your area and your community, we were a hub for that. So it was easy for us to do our testing during the year for our kids. So that's one of the things that attracted me to Fort Valley. It's more than just the school; it's the town and the community. But yeah, it's COVID based. Like I said, we had kids on campus, but our campus was closed. So
okay.
tried to keep that bubble.
Interesting, interesting. So, leading up until next year, and when your season starts for your team, uh, you're in the SIAC. What are you looking? What are you expecting this year with your team coming up?
Well, our first year we finished third on the west side, a tough side with you have Benedict who finished first. James Rice does a great job. Behind him was Savannah State, their first year, trickling back down to Division II because they were transitioning
Yes,
to Division I. So
from the
we have
MEAC.
Division I players still. So we
Yes.
finished third. We were happy with that. And then you have Tuskegee and Miles on the other side are perennial powers. So we plan to finish no lower than second with what we recruited, what we returned.
Wow.
We're
Okay.
excited. The kids understand from day one and just get after it. And we have some pieces that we're really excited about. And then, so you just got to be in that Final Four at the conference tournament time, and anything can happen.
Okay, and that's definitely true with that. So, schedule wise, are you looking to play D2s, D1s? How do you do your non-conference schedule?
We have been very strategic this year. A lot of things that we've learned as a conference in our side is we have to put ourselves in the best position to get some at-large bids, not just be a one-bid league. So we took a
Yes.
strategic look at how we scheduled and what we did and what other leagues, because it's based on region. So we're in it with Sunshine State and we're in it with the Gulf South. And so you're trying to really make sure your numbers can match up outside of conference. So it's very strategic. This year we have one Division I that we're going to play as an exhibition, Georgia
Okay.
Southern.
Okay.
And we've scheduled Stetson before and Georgia State, but just not going to pan out. It really is more experience for our kids and recruiting and seeing how we match up. So we like that as an exhibition. We're going to open the season with them. And then
Okay.
we play Team Shorter out of Rome, Georgia, to
Hmm.
open up the season. And then we have added more games, non-conference, but with conference teams for the SIAC to put us in a better position. The way things break down at the end of the year, losses versus wins versus out of region to put us in those best positions. We've learned a lot in our last 2 years. So it's one of the things that the coaches have gotten together with on east and west side and how we can put ourselves in a better position to get 2 teams or 3 teams like those other leagues do. So that was a conscious effort that we did. So we like scheduling 1 or 2 Division Is, games that, competitive or winnable against people in that region, and then everything else should take care of itself. We've added up to, I think it's 20 games with our conference. So, and some of those are non-conference, but conference teams. So
Gotcha.
it was a plan this year. Yep.
Sounds like it's a strategic plan as
Oh,
well.
yes, yes. There's a thought process.
So let me ask this, even though you are all set from a recruiting standpoint, when you're looking for a prospect, what do you look for? Do you look for body language? Of course, you're looking for skill. Obviously, you're looking for skill. But do you look for body language, how the kid reacts when they're doing well, when they're not doing well? Can you just dive into that a little bit? Because I always have parents that ask me, what are coaches looking for?
Well, I'm a basketball coach and I need basketball players. Like one thing that I may have not won a lot of games when I was in the Mountain West as the head coach at Air Force, but I always try to recruit talent. So basketball ability for me, if you're a post, you got to be able to finish layups, play in the paint, defend in the paint. I like a lot of on-ball screens and be able to roll in that footwork. So do your job where you're supposed to do your job for me within my offense. So in the paint and in. I don't need you hitting trail threes. That's a lot of other programs. That's great. I love the
Okay.
mid-range game for me and what I look for.
Okay.
I like to
Okay.
be a little more physical, not necessarily
Okay.
yes, old school a little bit. And my point
I
guard,
know where you're from with that philosophy. I know where you're from.
yeah, our point guard has to get points, but then can also distribute. I mean, then once they break down that front line, things can happen. And I
Definitely.
like running a lot of continuity sets. So if you're a
Okay.
slasher, we know where to put you. They know what they're looking for. These three options within whatever we call, and then that's your read. They take something away, then something else is going to be open. And just going through those concepts with our kids and playing and what we're looking for. We've added better 3-point shooter percentage wise, so we can open things up.
Okay.
But we definitely love a little continuity, little two man, take advantage of what mismatches we like, and our kids understand that. So I think a lot of it is specific to what the coach likes to teach and is comfortable, what you can be successful for, and we can do well recruiting with Georgia kids, regional kids that can play athletic. And then this year we'll have the numbers to be able to press, and I like to press.
So that lets me know you like a little physical post player then.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, I know where that philosophy's from. I already know. So
Yep.
you like that physical post. Now, on the other side of the ball, defense. What do you expect from your prospects on the defensive side?
Oh, I love to get after it. I'm man to man.
Okay.
Like playing zone is either it's one or two things. It's a no brainer because you can't shoot. Okay, then we're not going to
Yeah.
reinvent the wheel. You can chuck and we'll go chase and then go the other way. Um,
Hmm.
or man to man, get up in you. And then we'll do a lot of switching if we need to, or scout defense for what's going to work. And our kids get a lot of reps that way, knowing the things we look for in the week based within our man principles. That we have core things, but love to get up the line, on the line. We love to deny. And I've got some athletic guards that'll be able to do some things in the backcourt and harass you. We recruited defensive player of the year out of the Kansas conference a year ago. And then, like I said, this year came into our program, was able to do some things and showed her skills. So we're excited, but yeah, definitely want to show you that we're more athletic.
And you're touching something, and I harp on this almost with every women's coach and every men's coach as well. With your philosophy also lets me know you have an added advantage when you come in knowing defensive principles out of high school. Because unfortunately, we have a lot of coaches that still teach zone, and which most of you guys do not like. And I always try and harp and say, you guys need to learn man-to-man principles if you're going to college because you're going to have a step ahead of your competition if you learn those ball you man, if you learn those shell drill and rebound.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep. I totally agree. There's a place for zone. There's a place, like I said, if they're low percentage shooting team, then we'll just sit in a zone, pack it in. Um, and to change up sometimes the tempo of the game or possessions. But I
Mm-hmm.
definitely like man to man. I like aggressive. I like just, hey, we're gonna get up in you one on one. If you can get by us, okay, we'll have some help, but we're gonna be able to contain you or shut you down or know that you better come with something. I don't like, and this is personal, totally personal. Letting people throw the ball around the perimeter and catch it. I'm like, ooh, they've already caught it. And like in women's basketball, you have enough good shooters that's the problem. They've caught it and you've let them be able to get their shot off. That is not our philosophy.
So you're more referring to like if they can get those cross court passes, and a lot of times those type of passes can kill a defense once
Oh,
they start getting those, and you're not tipping them at least
yeah,
and
correct. Yeah.
contesting.
I mean, skip passes kill zones, but I'm up the line. I'm just going to say that there's a different defensive philosophy that's worked for people who've won national championships on the men's side, and they pack it in or pack a line, but that I didn't grow up that way. I'm from Indiana. I'm a Hoosier. Bob Knight, Gene, Katie, in the head here watching enough games. It's like, no, man to man.
Oh, and now side note, with you being from Indiana, my roommate was from Anderson.
Oh, he's an Anderson Indian. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, he's from Anderson. And matter of fact, you would probably be familiar with Archie Fuller then.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yep, that was my roommate, and his younger brother was Kojak Fuller, so I'm sure you're
Oh,
familiar with
yes.
him.
That's
So yeah,
that.
and I got to with him being my roommate, I got to understand Indiana basketball. I mean, I knew about it because, of course, I knew about Damon Bailey, Alan Henderson, and Eric Montross, and all those guys, but I got to know it intimately once I met him. And, he would talk about that, especially with Glenn Robinson and everybody else. Definitely. And one of my good friend, the producer, he's from Louisville, Kentucky. So he would always talk about that. he gives the same face too.
Yep.
When he would talk about the Indiana Kentucky All-Star game
All-Star
out
game.
of high
Yep.
school. So
Yep.
he
They
would talk
just
about that as well. So, but
it,
basketball in the Midwest, the one thing you guys know the game so well, and you all are shooters. That's you
yeah.
guys are
Yeah.
shooters. At the end of the day, that's what it is. And I mean, he was a phenomenal shooter. Archie was a phenomenal shooter as well. And I was like, man, what do you guys do? This have this. He was like, man, we eat, sleep, and drink
It's
football. I mean, I'm sorry, basketball.
yeah.
And with me being from Pittsburgh, when you got to Edinboro, it's football crazy.
Yes, that's all I knew. Football and the NFL
Yeah,
players from just all the high schools. But yeah, it's different.
exactly.
My first hoop was in a barn, that at 10 feet up in the air was our rim, and you'd play and
Hey,
play fundamentally, and you could play pickup anywhere in the state. But it was fun, and it was something you'd watch with the family, and you were, a big time either Purdue or Indiana fan growing up watching that,
mm-hmm.
boys or girls. So it's huge. It's funny you mentioned football because one of my mentors, who was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and then came up with Dungy when they went to the Colts together, and
Mm-hmm.
he would call me like, "Oh yeah," da, da, da. And you would go to his training camp in Tampa, and it's packed just for training camp practice, night practice. I'm like, because I worked at the University of Tampa, I'm like, okay, a little crazy. The Buccaneers, and this is before they even went to their first playoff game under Dungy for years. Okay,
Uh-huh.
then he comes up to Indiana, and he's like, oh, so now he has Peyton Manning as his quarterback to throw to his tight ends, who's a tight ends coach, and we go to training camp. I'm like, oh, I'm on vacation visiting the family in Fort Wayne. I'll drive down for, visit for training camp like we always do. So I drove down with my brother, and we're like out in the middle of nowhere or before Anderson. And he's like, there's nobody here. I'm like, yeah, it's football. He's like, nobody here. I'm like, yeah, I know you're a professional football player and you're the Colts, but yeah, there's nobody going to be here. So then he would go to high school games, right? Because all the guys
Uh-huh.
would get together and like, you got to go to an Indiana high school game. And it was Chris Thomas was the top recruit in Indy, about ready to go to Notre Dame. He's like, I guess I got to go see this kid play, just for fun. And they get invited.
Uh-huh.
It was like, it's packed. I'm like, yeah. So it was just such a change. And he was like, I can't believe they like basketball. I'm like, yeah, that's what it's about. Yeah,
But
Peyton
you
won
know
you
what
a Super Bowl, but yeah, that's what we're about.
I loved about Indiana, which they just recently changed, and I hated. I hated how there was no classification back in the day, and it was just everybody played. Whoever wins wins.
Yes, all of old schoolers are in that camp.
I
We are
used to
in that camp.
love that. I mean, yeah, you had the underdogs with 1A against going up against the big teams from Gary Roosevelt or Indianapolis, Lawrence North, and all that. Sure. And that's what made it so good because you like, here comes the underdog. And sometimes they would really get far in the state tournament as well because they played great together.
They do, and they played together since elementary school. Like feeder systems, like people
Yeah,
don't get it. Like it can be a powerhouse, men's side, women's side, and the other thing that's phenomenal that people just don't understand. Like if your boys were bad and didn't win, the town would not go to the boys' games. They would go to the girls' games. Whoever was good, whoever
really?
won, that's who their season tickets were. Oh yeah, Wednesday night, Friday night, and then like
Wow.
for the boys' games. Oh yeah. So
The other thing that he educated me on, man, the high school arenas in Indiana are crazy.
yeah.
I was like, this is like Pennsylvania's football stadiums.
Mhm.
Now you know
Yeah.
all about the high school
Oh yeah.
stadiums, but like the high school arenas, I was like, what is this? Is insane.
Oh
And
yeah.
like when I would go, I was like, man, this is like something. Like for Anderson, Anderson's town would shut down when they would play. Shut down.
Yep.
I was like, no, that doesn't have. I mean, yeah, basketball is, we have some good basketball, but not passionate like that. I have no problem saying that in Pennsylvania. That passion in Kentucky and Indiana is just really
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, and there was a lot of kids that went to Toledo that were from Indiana.
Yep.
Toledo had a good girls team, and they
Oh
had a
yeah.
number of girls from Indiana on the team, a
Yep.
number of them.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, yeah,
And
Indiana basketball is something totally different.
yeah, you would
Totally
say that,
different.
like knowing, your roommate and being from Anderson, one of the all-time favorites watching the state championships would be the game with Scott Skiles. So you had the
Yes.
Plymouth Pilgrims, Scott Skiles' team against those great Anderson Indians teams, overtime, all that. And then
Mm-hmm.
it tells you something when they move the basketball game into the football arena and that was circulating this pandemic, all the Damon Bailey stuff. And it's like, yeah,
Uh,
that's how we do it. We move the game.
I went to 5 star with Damon Bailey. We're not going to get into that. Me personally, I mean, it's some 30 years later. I thought he was overhyped. That's just my opinion. He was good. He was a great team player. Let me say that. He was an awesome. If you got him in that motion offense, that's where he was tough.
Yeah.
But he got caught up once he was not in that motion offense. So when he got the 5 star, it's a different ball game when you're not in that motion offense.
I can see that. I mean, that's why a team sport or team in Indiana
Yes. Yeah.
is good. He does what he does very well.
Yeah.
But I mean, no one else can say they moved from the high school arena to the Hoosier Dome and
That's
sold it
true.
out.
That's true.
Just saying.
That is true.
That's some pretty tough credentials to follow. That we have to move it from this big stadium, which is like number 2 in the world, to the football Hoosier Dome and sell out. And then
And
he
he had
won.
a
So
cult following. He had a
little
cult
pressure.
following. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was good. Great guy. Met him on the recruiting road. Um, Knew some of the kids. He's a little bit younger than me, but yeah, it's Indiana basketball on the men's and women's side. Yeah.
What is he doing now?
He was on the women's side at Butler, and then I know
Really?
kids that were a little bit older, and he had just stepped away from that. So he's probably going to get back into coaching, but he was doing a good job up there with
Okay.
Butler
Well,
and what Kurt was doing.
interesting. And I wouldn't have thought he would. Well, I didn't think he would touch coaching. I thought once he left Bobby Knight and once his time in the NBA was over, I thought he would just settle off into the sunset. But hey, I think that's great. I think
Yep.
that's great.
Yep.
Hey, but coach, I definitely want to thank you coming on to the show. Like it was just ironic when we first started talking. Oh, Dan Burrow. As you can see, I named off a
Yep.
couple key people just like that. I said, oh yeah, she went there. She knows. She knows. And then with you being from Indiana was even more ironic. But I want to thank you for coming on to the show. And Fort Valley is how far is that from Macon? Because right now I'm working in Macon right now
It's
on a
20 minutes.
contract.
20 minutes.
Are you
So
serious?
easy peasy. Yeah, I live in Warner Robins, which is 30
Oh
minutes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's right off
That's
the
real
exit. Yeah.
close.
Great
Yeah,
shot.
definitely. Okay.
Come
Yeah, I
down
may
to
have to
each
shoot down
county.
there. Definitely. I may have
We
to
need to
shoot
have
down
you.
there. Okay. Okay. Well, are you guys on campus or not?
A little bit hit and miss. Hit me with a DM. That's the
Okay.
easiest way. And then I'm going to
Definitely.
work a camp down in Florida, just to
Okay.
see what's happening with the younger Florida kids. We do have tuition remission from the border states, so we do look for some other people.
Okay.
So Fort Valley's trying to get after it, but I appreciate what you're doing, David Jones. Love, everything that you're trying to reach, boys and girls. So it's always
I
huge.
appreciate that. Definitely appreciate that. And then you with the home cooking, that's even more special for me because Coach Mason that's coming up next, he's in Pittsburgh. Everybody started to say, man, can you get outside of Pittsburgh even though you're in Georgia? I'm like, hey, man, I got to support my state, my hometown.
There's no
Gotta
reason
support it.
to.
Oh, definitely. But Coach, this again, I tell everybody that, when we have these type of interviews, will not be your last time. And like I said, I'm going to shoot down there and catch up with you. You're 20 minutes away. That makes sense.
Exactly. We'll have fans back in the stands. We're excited, and it should be kind of back to normal.
Sounds good. Well, we definitely will be catching up, and I thank you for coming on the show. You take care, okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, take care. Coach Williams, real good person, and a great coach as well. A plethora of experience, and I look at her; she's going to make some noise in SIAC. My next guest, I should say, plural. He's not a stranger to the show. He's been on the show in the past, but we're going to touch a different topic tonight. We're going to touch on some sports psychology. So I have David Irvin, and then I got my guy, Mike Mason, coming on. How you guys doing today?
Hello? Can you hear me okay?
What's going on, Coach? How you doing?
How you doing, man?
Man, I'm good, man.
Yeah, and I think Dave, when I put his information in there, I was thinking of somebody else. His name is David Levine, not Irvin. That's my fault.
Okay. How you doing, David?
Doing good. Let me just make one more correction. It rhymes with heaven. David Levin.
Okay. And thank you for coming on to the show, man. When Mike was telling me about everything that's going on, this actually started from a show in the past where I had a guy come on and we were talking about education, and Mike's brain is always spinning, and he had brought this up to me, and I said, hey, man, let's bring him on the show and let's talk some more about this. I'm a big advocate of sports psychology. I talked to Mike about this because one of the things, even before we talk about in-game sports psychology, it was once this is over, and once this is over from a college perspective, a lot of guys have a hard time adjusting to college basketball life or college athletics being over. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that totally makes sense. I mean, and just to be clear, I'm not actually a sports psychologist.
Okay.
The work I've done is about, getting a hold, kind of mastering your own mental game. But it's not. I'm not a psychologist, and I don't come from a sports background. But still, having said that, anytime you're in a situation where what you're doing now is really your identity, and then that changes. That is really hard work. I mean, I had that experience. My background, I was a singer-songwriter, musician all my life. And then about 10 years ago, finally, I stopped. And, it's just a strange thing. I mean, you just don't know who you are. And when you amplify that with all of the levels of what's involved with being an athlete, seeing yourself as an athlete, being at that sort of level where the whole world also sees you there, yeah, that's really difficult inner work, no doubt.
So I want to touch on your company. Tell me more about your company, what your company is and what you do with your company.
The company's Raise Your Inner Game Sports Academy, and it's mental performance training for high school and college athletes. And the angle we actually take is we train coaches to bring the material to their team, or in some cases, independent coach sort of leaders who are we call them workshop leaders, who are not working with just one team, but they work with a bunch of different athletes in their area. But it's the same sort of dynamic. They take the core material, they bring it to the players and teach it to them rather than the players, teaching it, doing it themselves.
Okay. So how does it benefit athletes? Your work that you're doing, how does it benefit athletes?
Well, I mean, it's not news to anyone that the mental game is really the key to reaching your full potential. And my experience is that the mental game coaching that's available out there is not really that helpful for kids in that range, high school, college. Number one, it tends to be sort of motivational in nature. It's giving them new ways to think and just having them work harder. And maybe sometimes you get into some specifics like visualization or even meditation. But most of the time, it's the kind of stuff that they really need to be at a level where there's a sports psychologist available to work with the team, or they're in some sort of individual situation, one kid or a couple of kids who are really on a fast track or something, but it's not available to all of the kids. And so the coaches, and I hear the story a lot, coaches, it's just a common frustration. They've got their players, they know what their potential is, but they also see that they're not hitting it. And it's the mental game that's holding them back, and they just don't have much to give them. So what's different about our stuff, and what this actually does is, for the first time, it gives coaches and athletes a really practical, almost mechanical way. And by mechanic, I mean like the mechanics of other things in the game. A real specific, practical, measurable way to actually work on their mental game. So kids at any level, oops, sorry about that. Let that run. At any level can actually engage with their game and make real progress in I don't want to say on their own because they work with their coach, but wherever they're at, it can really make a measurable difference in their performance, kind of at any level. I'm going to mute that. I'll be right back. Apologize.
No problem. Mike, while he steps away, Mike.
Yes.
So, First Love, what's going on this season with First Love, man?
Well, the high school team just made a trip to. They just played in Philly live. This past weekend. I've moved back for the summer back to West Virginia.
Okay.
And I'm actually up north in the New Jersey, New York area, spreading some things about the skill development camp. So my scholarship camps that we talked about before with the over the Hoop Group and a couple other places to start giving some more money away. So and in the process of being there, talking to some of those instructors and AAU teams about doing the scholarship camps for their teams. Mm-hmm. Some of these same topics have come up when I got into we got to that high school, that freshman year class. Hit that 14, 15-year-old stage as you're watching and having these conversations with these coaches about different things that they're facing. And how some of the old school ways, as you and I have talked about, and even the Coach Williams that you just had on, our mentality for our generation was tough it out. Those type of words, and so we tend to we can be a little more aggressive at times. In how we did things, because as we like to say, we had to dig it out the dirt, and nobody was baby you. It was first or it was nothing else. We grew up under that adage that second place was the first loser in those days. And that's just so a lot of the stuff that you and I've talked about, David Jones, I'm sorry, that we've a lot of this stuff is all starting to tie together, and then hopefully during my time at First Love we'll be able to implement a lot of these things too, to help out moving forward to where we're you just don't want to be a basketball school. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that these kids have the prerequisite skills at the next level, because we know that the ball's going to stop bouncing one day, whether by choice or by injury or a combination of both, whatever the case may be, it's going to stop bouncing. So when I reached out to David about this, I kind of found him by happen chance, because as you had mentioned when we first got started, I had discussed this on my podcast with you. I guess that was back in September. And October, November, something like that. Yeah. But I just finished up my training with Brian Kane. Mm-hmm. And when I met Mr. Levine in this whole area, some of the things that we talked about were, how do you introduce this to the masses? Because what I learned before, and a lot of great stuff inside of there, it was too elongated for everyone. and
Yeah.
to where, as he said, that you need to be able to function in these areas immediately. And I didn't want to have a situation where the athletes or the non-athletes, whoever we were talking to, because as he mentioned, I'm sure we'll touch on that again, this wasn't birthed in sport, where a lot of these things were birthed in sport when it came to sports psychology. David's approach came from a non-athletic and a non-sports area, which allowed it to cross over both sides, on and off the court. So it makes it a little easier to be able to reach out to a lot of people. But by having it in the format that he's put everything together, the process of understanding what has to be done in these circumstances, these stresses and these emotional levels that we'll talk, I'm sure we'll touch on, we can do it in game. It's not, let me step off here to the sideline. I don't have 5 or 10 minutes. I've got 10 seconds on the free throw line to get my mind right. I've got a few seconds in the huddle to be able to operate. I got until the pitcher gets out of his wind up before the umpire tells me it's time to get into the box and start performing. So all these different things don't have a lot of time, and we didn't want them to be dependent on me. Because when they're dependent on me, then there's already a voice that they're already listening to, and they don't need to have me in their head either. So being able to process all of those things, from a coaching standpoint, I'm already yelling enough stuff. Do this, changing plays and things of that nature. So when you're starting to go through the same duress that I can create as a coach by getting in your tail or, whatever the case may be, that I can't be the problem all the time as well as a solution. But if I can teach you some things that can help you maybe tune me out and then also get yourself together, then I know when you leave me, then you're well ahead of the curve, and I've done my job. So that's kind of where my focus is now in this summer, is to really bring some awareness to these issues from on a larger scale, and not just on the elite level athlete, as David was mentioning. We hear about all the professional sports athletes having access to a psychologist, whether they're a golfer or a baseball player or this or whether that. Well, those individuals had to start somewhere before they got to the pro level, and making it readily available in a cost-effective manner, in a time-efficient manner, is kind of where I'm trying to hit the ground running with this whole thing to get these things out here to the masses. So I do appreciate in advance you allowing us to take some time on the show to spread the word about this stuff.
Oh, no problem. I mean, I'm interested as well. And, a lot of things that I like to really touch on, what's really the purpose? And, David, I want to ask you this. What's really the purpose of this performance coaching?
The real purpose, I think, is just to help the individual athlete reach their potential. That sounds sort of like a generic thing to say, but it's really what it comes down to. I mean, the gap between what someone's capable of and where they are right now is always about the mental game. They've got the skills or they've done the work, but they get into the moment and they lose their focus, or they lose their confidence, or, whatever it is, there's something internally that's keeping them from being their best. Or another example, they work on something with their coach. They remember that they know what they're supposed to do in a particular scenario, but they get in the moment and they forget. And the coach is like, "Wait, we talked about that. You know what to do." They're not doing what they know to do. So that gap is always about that. So if somebody can really learn to get a handle on their inner processes and their thoughts, their emotions, their feelings, they can unleash what they're capable of. And until they do that, it's going to be really hard to do it, And I want to say one more thing, if I can, real quick, riffing off what Michael just said. The other reason it's important to me to make this kind of these skills available at a younger age, David, it was to your first question. It has to do with that transition out of sports. And most people are not going to get ever to the point where they have access to a sports psychologist. Yeah. And if they don't learn these skills in the younger ages, they're never going to get them. And that transition is going to be way harder than it needs to be. So these particular skills, they do have a name in psychology circles. There's 3 of them at the core of the mental game.
Okay.
One's called cognitive control, which is really just your thinking, focusing your attention where you want it, rather than having it go wherever it wants. Emotional self-regulation, which is pretty self-evident, right? It's controlling our feelings rather than letting them control us. And the third one is impulse control, which is, you normally see that with stuff like handling our cravings and our addictions and making bad choices. But those are the 3 core skills in the Raise Your Inner Game material, and they are really surprisingly easy to learn and practice and develop. And once you've got those skills, they are first and foremost just hugely powerful for sports. And we can talk about in a minute about why that's why, but they're also fundamental to life in general. So that's the other thing I like about this program, is that we can bring them into it with the purpose of helping them be as successful as possible as an athlete. But we also know that these are the exact same skills we'd want to give them if we were just talking about success in life.
Okay. And that's going to lead into my next question. What are the challenges when implementing this type of program with teams?
There's a few of them. There's always a certain amount of just, resistance, any sort of thing. Our particular program is delivered initially in a classroom format. I mean, they learn the basic materials in sort of a classroom format, 2 half days, maybe 1 long day, watching some videos, doing some exercises. Some people, especially with today's attention issues we have, sometimes that takes a little help to have the kids keep their focus and attention, but we've designed the program to help with that. With any sort of, with this particular material, the whole subject is kind of fraught. You start talking about the mental game anyway, and all of a sudden people have their own preconceptions. What are we going to talk about? That's weird stuff. I should just tough it out or whatever. So there's a little bit of barrier. Just what do we, do I even want to do this work? But having said all that, I've done a lot of work on making the material, the delivery of this material, overcome those barriers as well as possible. I have a lot of experience with this kind of thing in other areas, and just making it easy for the coach to bring it to the players, making it as interesting and engaging as possible. Another thing I'll say, and Michael can speak to this, the material itself, if you get the word, hey, tomorrow we're going to work on the mental game, you might be thinking, no, thank you. But once you get into the material, it's so self-explanatory, and it just makes sense right away. It kind of pulls you in. So it is has its own self-sustaining energy, because it's speaking to them where they live. They recognize it, and they do. I'll say this too. They might think, I don't want to work in the mental game, but nobody's more aware of the gap between potential and performance than the athletes themselves. They're the ones who are out there saying, I don't know why I didn't do it. I don't know why I'm stressed out, or whatever the problem is. I don't know why I get so distracted. So if you can actually present it to them in a way where they go, oh, you know what? I want that help too. So it's all that's to say, the material sort of has its own life as far as overcoming the challenges.
Okay. And this leads into my last question as you're touching this. Is there a training system you have for athletes, or is this just more for the average individual, or is this more for both? Or when you train people to implement your system, how do you do that? Like Mike said, is this for first love kids, or is this for your everyday person?
The material was originally developed for adults, and it's just in their work lives, their work and personal lives. But the Sports Academy, it's been totally rebuilt to speak to sports performance. And it really is optimized for that, 15, 16 to 19, 20 age range. Not to say other people at different ages won't get value in it, but that's the sweet spot of where we think it's best suited for. And, as far as the nature of the training, I sort of think of it's like any other sort of skill camp. Like if I went to a camp, and forgive me, I'm about to embarrass myself with my basketball terminology, but let's say I went to a camp that was going to help me work on my shooting. You know, I'm going to go for a weekend and I'm going to work on shooting technique. Well, there'd be some specific mechanical things you'd have me work on. My elbow position, probably, my follow through, and some things like that. This is exactly the same, but for the mental game. You learn some specific, in the initial classroom thing I mentioned, you learn some specific skills that you can use to help you in those areas. For example, one of the problems people have is getting distracted by their thoughts. You know, peak performance really is, in sports, is really when you've done all the training, the skills are all there, but in the moment, you are just completely present and paying attention and focused on what's in front of you. There's this great story I like to repeat about Michael Jordan. Somebody asked him, you know, what are you thinking about, you know, on the sidelines on during a timeout? And his answer was, I'm thinking about chewing my gum, which really means I'm thinking about nothing, right? I'm not off in my head. I'm not thinking about the plays. I'm not thinking about the clock. I'm just completely, fully here. That's the key to peak performance in pretty much any sport or position. So the enemy of peak performance, of being in the moment, is I'm off in my head somewhere. There's some sort of thought or worry or whatever that's got me distracted elsewhere, got my thoughts off somewhere else. So one of the skills you learn is how to just shut that down, to just observe that thought coming up and say no, and just bring it right back. It's super simple, but it's incredibly powerful. And you can actually learn it. And then once that initial learning is over, you've heard about it, you've practiced the skill a little bit. Now, again, it's just like that camp. You come back and you work on practicing it and drilling it over and over in practice and on game day. I noticed David got.
Hey guys, here. I'm gonna step in and assist David since he got cut off with this interview.
How you doing, Dre?
Yeah, this is the chance for the producer to come in and kind of help the show continue going. Fascinating stuff, David. How have you seen this kind of play out practically for these athletes, for the kids? What's some of the first things that you notice as they initially take on the program? Or is it something where you see results within a couple of weeks early on, or does it take some time?
Oh, that's an interesting thing. It's almost instant. I mean, it's an example. It's the kind of thing where I'm trying to think of an analogy in a particular game where you can start and feel the difference immediately, and it also continues to grow and develop over time. But as soon as a kid starts to recognize the mechanisms that are pulling them off track, like the thing I just mentioned, you're trying to be focused, and all of a sudden you're thinking about something. Most people don't even notice that. I mean, that really is a huge step. Most of us just get pulled off into our thoughts, and that's what our life is pretty much like. But once they start to see that, they go, oh, you know what? I do recognize that. That thought did just kind of come up. And then I can just say, no. They can use that 5 minutes later. They can use that instantly. And they do, and they feel the difference. And by the way, that same mechanism of the thoughts I'm talking about also works for emotions. I'm feeling stressed out. I'm feeling nervous. I'm feeling frightened. You know, they might not want to admit that, but that's for real. They'll see that feeling come up. They'll say, no, I'm not gonna go there. And they pull themselves back, and it works instantly. So, but directly to your question, the difference you see is different for every athlete. I mean, everybody has their own, whatever their mental game blocks are, they're very personalized. The good news is the mechanism of them is universal. So every kid has his own thing that's holding him or her off, pulling him off track. But they can use the same tools to get a handle on it and just say, so you'll hear him say, yeah, I was having this little mental game thing that was kind of just messed me up a little bit. They can't even articulate it all that clearly. They'll say, but all of a sudden, yeah, I feel a lot better. I feel a lot more confident and strong. I'm not getting so psyched out on game day. It's these little things, but that little thing is the last bit that's keeping them from feeling good about what they're doing and executing what they intend to do. If that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense to me. It is a conversation that I've had often with even parents, telling them, hey, for instance, we have a live period coming up here for AAU. And the first thing that I tell parents when their kids are playing in front of college coaches is don't talk about basketball in the car. Be extremely positive, be extremely encouraging, because when they make mistakes out on the floor and college coaches are watching, trust me, they know.
Yeah.
And they're already beating themselves up about it. I've already got on them in a huddle. Trust me, we're correcting these mistakes. But to play good, they have to feel good. And it doesn't matter how much instruction that they get. If they're not feeling good about themselves, it's going to be tough for them to play well. David, have you seen this? And Mike, I'll toss it up to you too. Have you guys seen this as the program gets implemented, have even positive impacts for self-esteem, academics, improvements in other areas off the floor as well?
Well, first, just transparency. Mike and I are just getting started with this. I had the full sports academy. Again, if you remember, I mentioned earlier, it was originally designed for outside of sports, for just parents and families and people at work. So I developed the sports academy version of it last year and was just about to roll it out officially right when COVID hit and sports just stopped. So we don't have a lot of direct feedback yet from the sports realm, but we're looking forward to it. But I can say this, that like I just said, each kid's particular mental issue is unique, but the mechanisms are the same. That's also true inside and outside of sports. When somebody, well, even just your example a minute ago, so you say to parents, don't talk about this in the car. But they get into the car and they want to talk about it, right? I mean, it comes up. They powerfully want to talk about it.
They can't
so in order to stop themselves doing that, they need this self-regulation skill. They need to observe that desire they're having and just engage with it and say, no, we're not doing that. We said we're not going to do that. So that's the kind of core skill. And you think about the struggles people have in any area of their life, they're the exact same struggles. If they're trying to get some creative work done, they're trying to stay focused and write or paint or whatever they're doing, but they keep getting distracted. And it's not just the phone ringing, it's their own mind distracting them. Well, what about this? Or what about that? So to optimize that, you've got to be able to learn to say, nope, not that, focusing on this. The same skills apply in the same way to every area of our lives.
That's powerful.
Dre, you had mentioned something that we added, I guess, Dave. I guess it's been about a month now.
Yeah.
When it came down to the parental side of this whole thing, from AAU, high school, whatever, coaches have always had to deal with, what parents are saying before, after, or even during games, and keeping the kids' attention and the athletes' attention before, after, and during the games, because you can't be. You can't say, oh, I'm the coach. Listen to me when I'm talking while they're looking over your shoulder, listen to the.
Oh, I just lost Michael's audio.
I did too, but we're still here.
All right, it's you and me. So I think I know where Michael's going a little bit. I'll try and fill in that a little, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
One of the things we added, like you said, in the last month was for each kid who goes through the program, and it typically, like if a coach is bringing it to their team, every kid goes through the program. But they need, they need their workbook, they need their materials to participate in the class. So for each kid, they also get access to a parent version of the material. So the videos the kid's going to go through with their coach or with the workshop leader, their parents have a self-guided course going over the exact same material. The premise, the reason we say that to them is the best. Well, first of all, the mental game begins at home. So if you want to really support your kid in, hitting their peak, hitting their potential, you need to know what they're working on. You need to be on the same page with them with material. So we want you to go through this program also. But then we say pretty clearly, like I said, the mental game begins at home. If you really want to support them, you need to model this behavior yourself. You need to, raise your own inner game and get your own self-regulation and your own self-control going so you can really best support them.
Vital. I can say as a parent myself going through with my own kids, sometimes as you make mistakes, it can take you a while to learn and give your kid the space that they need to have their own experience with the game. I think that is something that me as a parent just personally did not understand, because I wanted my parents to be so involved with the game when I was younger, and they weren't. So I was super involved with the game, not with my sons, not realizing that, hey, because of how I grew up, I had my own like basketball was my thing. There was no one else involved with it. It was my thing. And giving my kids the ability to establish their own relationship with the game. And it's paid positive dividends. I think they are really enjoying themselves with dad just showing up to the gym and being dad.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, has that been your experience dealing with parents?
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you loud and clear now, bro.
Okay. Yes, it's and I know it's a hard thing to do, especially parents who were athletes and had careers on their own. But I know as a parent, it was, playing sports at a certain level, there was always an expectation and added pressure that some of us can put on our children without even realizing that we're doing it. Just by your mere presence and the things that you've accomplished in the past can add that added pressure. So as you were saying, just want to sit back and just be a dad, definitely has made things better, I believe, for my own personal children. And then sometimes even when having conversations with parents that I may have kids that I'm coaching, for them to understand those philosophies, which is why it was a great thing when David listened to me about what we were talking about when implementing this stuff with letting the parents hear it, because I truly believe that especially from a college standpoint, that, and I said this when we had our previous conversation earlier last year, towards the end of the year, is that parents and kids have to realize that the coach isn't only recruiting just one part of you. They're recruiting the other side as well. So they may have an interest in your son or your daughter, but they're also paying attention to how you handle yourself, because they can't be in a tug of war and having, basically, for lack of a better term, a devil on one there and an angel on the other, and because they're always going to lose that battle when it comes to having that growing attachment and that relationship with that student athlete. So those parents who allow coaches to be coaches, coaches to be mentors, coaches to be help with educating and life and things of that nature, I think they tend to get their experience with sports is more successful and more enjoyable than those, for lack of a better term, those helicopter type parents who either always have something to say, always have some kind of recommendation, always have some kind of suggestion, always have some kind of complaint, and you always hear them, because it's like anything else. The more I hear you, the more I'm probably going to find a way to tune you out. And as Dave was saying, we're constantly, if an athlete is right there in the middle of battle and they're having those self-doubts, like, as you get into the trainer, where a lot of the name came from was, athletes having those conversations with themselves, like, Michael, why did you do this? Well, who, as he said in the book, who are you talking to? So if I'm talking to myself as an athlete, I've got the coach talking to me as a coach, I've got assistants, I've got the fans, but the one voice that I know I'm going to hear is my mother and my father. I don't care if I'm in a room full of 10,000 people. I'm going to hear that voice. because I'm probably already locked onto them by eyesight to know where they are before the game starts. So my natural instinct is to go there. But everything that's coming from that direction isn't always a good thing.
That is a understatement.
Yeah, and so it just turns into, it's just a lot of commotion that ultimately turns into white noise because you can't even decipher what it is you listen to. And so they get blinders on, they shut things out, and then all of a sudden time kicks in, and we're 3 or 4 games into a slump, or we're getting ready to get into playoffs and nobody's playing well, or off the court grades are suffering because you're worried about those pressures. And so when you would ask the question about how these things relate to off the court and in the classroom, me going through this training initially, and then, as I told David, I'm just going to slide bits and pieces in when I was talking to my guys, and this how it actually changed how I communicated with them and allowed me to paint pictures a little differently, so they can understand in a very simple and concise way of trust that process. Don't worry about the outcome. But in the process, you listen to everything that's going on in your mind, but shut down what you don't need to listen to. So if it's something negative, just wipe it out, because you have a choice. As he taught me, you have a choice. If I give in, I lose. If I avoid it, then I can move on to the next thing. I've won that battle, and it's a constant battle that you're going to be going through. And I think, like I said, it's one of those things with all the pressures that this generation is facing. Student athletes are truly at a disadvantage, because we spend a lot of time of talking about the how we do things on whatever sport it is, how to hit the ball further, how to run faster, how to jump higher, how to tackle better, how to throw title sparrows, how much jump shot should be, crossover, all those different things. But we're not telling you how to deal with the stresses and the strikes that come along with doing that. And so I think that we're leaving, a good chunk of the pie on the table, and we're not helping these kids get to where they need to be.
Yeah, another thing, if I can just interject there, and Michael, you shared some of this with me earlier, maybe you could do it again, but one of the things that the kids start to naturally do once they start to be aware of how these things are working internally is they start to make different choices about their own lives. They start to make different decisions and just do things that make it easier for them to be where they need to be. Michael, you said you did some of that yourself.
Yes. I mean, and I always said the best person to follow is a person who has a testimony. And so when you start applying those things to yourself and different things, such as, I think one of the very first lessons that David talks about in the book is his Diet Coke issues. and getting up, and one thing, the one thing that I know I have to deal with, and something as simple as making your bed as soon as you wake up. Start the day off with something positive. Just make your bed. And then, so he asked me to do this for, a day or so. How many times during the course of you getting up in the morning, getting ready to start your day, did you try to find a way or a reason not to make that bed right away? Oh, I'll do it when I get out of the shower. Or let me go ahead and get my little 2.5 mile run in. Or let me go downstairs and make me a sandwich. I'll get back to it in a minute. And then all of a sudden, we are 3 or 4 or 5 hours into something. It's time to go to the gym. I've got college coaches I have to talk to. I've got parents calling about whatever the case may be, and that bed is still a mess. So when applying it to myself, I said it's just that one small victory. And I remember hearing somebody say something when in my financial planning days, I can't have a bad week if I have a good Monday. So if I apply that to the same thing with this, if I start off with a victory right off the bat, make that bed, then I can always look over there and say, that's neat. And as we get through the book, then we get through, I'm a CEO of my own inner game, and now I have to worry about clearing off my desk. So if I can clear that off, then I can start knocking off those small things. And then the big things I can spend more time, if I have to, spend more time on. But if I can apply those same exact methodologies and practices to the larger issues, then I start to realize that these bigger problems are just small pieces that stacked on top of each other. So it's like playing Jenga. I'm just going to knock one thing off at a time until it all just comes falling down. And so that when I started applying some of these little smaller, quick little anecdotes when I was talking to my guys before they left to go home, My conversations got shorter. So their attention span, we were more focused and locked in. It wasn't, let's talk for 5 minutes. No, I'm going to talk for 30 seconds. Let me say something in the ear and we can keep it moving. So put that on your shoulder and you think about it later on. And then you started watching little silly things, such as you need to send this letter off to these coaches. You need to make sure your transcripts are right. All this stuff needs to be done. Hey, coach, I've got this. Like, wow, I've been asking you to do this for 3 months. All of a sudden, in 72 hours, you've got it done. It's easy to go back as a coach and say, hey, well, they're finally listening. No, I had to change what I was saying in order for them to change what they were doing. And once I got to that particular point, then I realized, I said, well, this is not only going to affect the kids that I'm working with or the kids that I may not even be working with at the time. It's going to make me a better coach. And if it makes me a better coach, then that means it's going to make me a better mentor. If it makes me a better mentor, then that's just one more that I don't have to worry about saying he went to the greatest university in the world or shoulda, coulda, woulda. I'm trying to eliminate all of that talk out of my own head. To say we can just wipe this whole slate clean. If we just change what we're doing on our end, then maybe the children will change and the players and the athletes will change what they're doing on theirs.
Coach, you are speaking gospel to me right now because that was actually a lesson that I've been trying to learn from afar from our good buddy, Coach Cabral Huff at Voorhees College. Okay. He always talks about stacking small wins, getting 1% better every day and stacking small wins. And I've been trying to apply that in my own life. And when it comes to this mission I'm on to lose weight and work out a little bit, it was not having any zero-sum days. So I may not always work out as hard or as long as I want to, but I make sure that I do something.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't have a 0 day.
Yes.
And that's how I've been managing it. I'm 7 pounds down. I'm feeling good. And we're gonna keep going with that thing. But I think that's a beautiful approach, and it's great what you guys are doing. David, I want to make sure we get this information out. How can coaches, parents, administrators that are listening and watching, how can they begin to engage with the material? Where can they find you? Where can they read and find more about it? Do you have a YouTube channel, social media, Twitter, Instagram?
Everything right now is really focused on the website, raiseyourinnergame.com. One word. raiseyourinnergame.com. There is also a Raise Your Inner Game Sports Academy Facebook page, but most of the energy, the blog posts, all the information about the program, all the, you can request, information about other programs. Everything we have really is at that site right now. So raiseyourinnergame.com or contact Michael.
raiseyourinnergame.com. For those that want to reach out and start on the program, if I may, you mentioned a kind of a train the trainer type of approach. If that's what I want to do as like myself, being an AAU coach, I have 5 teams in my organization. I would come to you and get trained and then be able to train some of the coaches under me. Is that how that works?
Yes, but even that coach training is self-directed. So you would come to the site, you'd find the page with the information about it. And then if you decide to do it, and this is the same program Michael has gone through, you register and you start and you just work yourself through the program one chapter at a time. There's a video, there's a quiz, there's some extra materials, real step-by-step, real easy but I can have Michael speak to how easy it is. But that's the process. It's a self-directed coach training program. And when you finish that course, and I think the whole thing, start to finish, probably would, depending on how your schedule is, probably would take you 6 to 8 hours to complete the whole course.
Yeah.
And at that point, then you're certified and you are free. And of course, we're in touch all the time, but you're free to go out and start offering, I think of them as mental game camps. Start putting the word out, inviting people in and holding your camps, however you want to work with your athletes.
Yes. Michael, any advice?
Yeah, I was right now. and so I can get you guys my direct contact information because we actually have a short intro that we can give guys and girls access to, where they can get a short 1 or 2 chapters, I believe it is, David.
Yeah, like you can register for a preview of the coach training, and just get in there and see the first couple of chapters, see how it all feels. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then once they register for something like that, and if they mention that they participate, they heard about this through the podcast, David's going to offer some form of discount to them for that training, and doing that to get them involved. So like I said, there's 2 options there. You have the coaches training, which would allow you, and Dre, and I'll just use you as an example for myself. I would just say if I was doing this with just my first love team, so every team that comes to me, I would be using that. So in your case, with your AAU guys or girls, so it'll just be you will work with your 5 teams if they were in that age bracket, or you would do what I did, which are really both of them, where you go into the workshop leader portion, which allows me not only to work with my group, but to go out and work with other teams. Because some people may not want to get into this, as David mentioned when we first got started. Sometimes it may sound taboo in some places. Well, I ain't got time for somebody getting in my head. Well, it's not trying to get in your head, just trying to make you deal with the pressures and the stresses and the failures and the successes a little better along the way. So, like I said, I can get my contact information and you guys can get that disseminated to the group. And doing that to get everybody access. But it's just something that once I got into it, after, I had a little head start because I'd already been certified previously. But as I mentioned earlier, the simplicity of this and a more of a facilitator role, I guess we need to touch on that. I guess it's easier to call yourself a coach or a trainer because that's what we do every single day. But in this is more, I'm really just facilitating things because the way David has it all set up, with it being video based, participation guides, little shameless plugs here, that the guides are here to walk everybody through. And this here is just a participation guide that each athlete would receive, leader guides that each workshop leader or coach would receive, and how to present things. So it flows properly. In doing it. But once they get involved in it and you start to, okay, this is real simple, because when you start breaking things down into smaller pieces, 2 to 3 minutes here, 2 to 3 minutes here, it's a little easier to retain it. Instead of having people talk at you or talk to you on a regular basis, that it's a whole lot easier to retain and then have complete access to it. And then when you add the parental side to it, with everybody who goes through it, no one in the household or no one in the organization should be not on the same page. When the language changes in the organization or in that particular team, coaches, players, and parents are all on the exact same page. So
that's so huge.
And I'm creating how we want to do things. We want to create our this is how my organization wants to do stuff. And now I have a buy-in. And it's things that we've done, as Dre, you mentioned it, and David's talked about this in previous podcasts, and we've all said things to try to motivate and to try to teach and to try to mentor and try to get the best out of our kids and our athletes. But we didn't realize what we were doing. Or somebody said, well, it worked for you, it didn't work for this person. And then you didn't know how to express it in a mainstay. So this gives you as I like to say from financial planning word, an organized sales talk. That the terminology that's being used will resonate through everyone because we're all speaking the same language. Every coach, every kid. So when we start talking about no quiet, or I start talking about elevators, or I start talking about lifts, and I start talking about triggers, whatever the case may be, that it's nothing that everybody's on the same page. And it's so easy to implement that when I'm training an individual basketball player, I catch myself now sliding those words in and just in conversation. Mm-hmm. And then it's a whole lot easier for me to explain it. So I'm not only dealing with the physical aspect of the game by talking about footwork and ball position and having and being locked and loaded. Well, now locked and loaded has a different kind of a connotation. because locked and loaded was just ready to get the ball ready to come out of my hands. Well, now locked and loaded is now a mental assessment and a mental discussion that can be had. So we can blanket a lot of different things because this terminology and these things allow us to apply to whatever our sport is and intertwine it in our day-to-day coaching and training without it adding any additional conversation or time away from what you're already there for. So if I got 2 hours of practice every other day, okay, then in that 2 hours of practice, there's probably 15, 20, 30 minutes of mental performance coaching and raising your inner game instruction going on. And now, like I said, it becomes like saying, hello, how you doing? Or getting up, brushing your teeth more. So it's just, and just dive into it and go.
And if I could say one more thing about that, that observation that it gives you a common language is super powerful. But there's one more thing it gives you that's also very powerful, which is you can now talk about inner game issues, mental game issues, in a way that's not personal. You know, right now, if you're talking about a kid's technique in his shot, you're just talking about the technique. You're not saying you're a loser or you're lazy or you don't care. You're just saying you still got your elbow in the wrong spot, you know? But when we talk about mental game stuff, we don't really have that sort of language to work with and those kind of structures to work with. So we end up basically implying there's still something kind of wrong with you. You still don't care enough. You're still getting too distracted. You're still getting too upset. Cut it out. None of which is actually very helpful. But once you have these sort of, not impersonal, but these sort of techniques you can talk about and these words you can use and this language, you can have a really productive and focused and coaching sort of conversation in a way that doesn't hurt their self-esteem, that doesn't, create barriers between you. It actually boosts all of those things. You can do it in a really forward-moving and effective way. That's a really beautiful new capability. And not just with the players. I mean, again, you're talking about the parents and everybody. You can discuss the mental game in an impersonal, non-judgmental way and make progress that you really didn't have a way to make before.
I absolutely love it. And I love that there is a parent component because it's 100% needed. I find even as an AAU coach for 15 years, I tell people all the time, my job is to educate parents and coach my parents as much as I coach my kids.
Yes.
Whether it's educating them or teaching them about the process or trying to get them to see the game from a player's or a coach's perspective, so much of it is that. And but as a coach, where I struggle is being able to give them tools. I'm able to get on the court and develop tools with my players, but I don't have any tools to give to my parents, right? Like I had to live this just like they did, and I had to make mistakes just in the same way that they do, and that was the only way to kind of learn. So this is, to me, groundbreaking to be able to give parents, youth sports parents, a tool to help them navigate is tremendous. And I can't wait to get started. Like I'm ready to, I'll be the Atlanta or the Georgia guinea pig and Georgia Man Up will get started because like even having conversations with my parents this weekend as I went out to support them with their high school teams, a lot of it is this, being able to keep them calm and understanding what's going on and patient and saying, hey, it's okay. This kid is still young. He's going to develop. See, college coaches like him. Sure, everything's going to be fine. They can't contact him yet, but they like him. Everything's going to be okay. To me, to be able to give them tools is going to be a next level thing. So I can't wait to get started. This sounds amazing to me.
It's everything you think about it, and you're telling that story. It seems so clearly true to me, but it's also the same thing with the players. We're giving the parents this list, and I've seen a bunch of these sort of contracts that teams put together for their parents, and all it really is one long list. I mean, they all make sense, but every one of them is another example of, I need you to self-regulate with this. I need you to not yell. I need you to stop saying these things when you want to say them. I need you to, it's all self-regulation. I need you to do all these things, but I'm not going to tell you how. And it's the same thing with the kids. I need you to be calm. I need you to be confident. I need you to have your thoughts clear and under pressure. Great. How do I do it? But when you can actually give them tools, you just said it, you can just feel how exciting that potential is.
For sure. If you care about the parents and the kids in your program, to me, you want them to be better people as much as you want them to be better players. And to me, like, I wish someone would have given some of this to me, because you can, to be able to, like you said, regulate your own thoughts, because I can almost spot it as a coach now, a parent that's getting really antsy, right? Like, my phone's not ringing. College coaches haven't called. Is my kid good enough? Which translates to, am I a good enough parent? Am I doing the right things? Maybe I'm not. I'm going to put pressure on this coach. I'm going to put pressure on this trainer. Because things aren't going the way that I think they should go. And I think to be able to give them tools to navigate that journey, because it is difficult, right? Like, I always want to sympathize with my parents and understand you invest a lot in your sport to help your child obtain a reduced cost or no cost college education, right? That's what we're in it for. Athletics will help you maybe get into a school that you wouldn't have had access to without it. So I definitely understand that there's a lot riding on it. But helping them kind of navigate that roller coaster ride, because, basketball is up and down. Kids, miss shots sometimes. Like, it's okay. Like, they're just going to miss. The pros miss. The pros have slumps. A high school kid is definitely going to have a slump. So giving parents tools to be able to navigate that, I think is tremendous. So I'm going to dive in. We have the website. I encourage everybody to check out the website. It's scrolling on the ticker, raiseyourinnergame.com. Mike, I'll definitely be in touch with you. Okay. And Georgia Man Up, we'll get started on this, man. And I can't wait to see the benefit with our guys.
Good. We look forward to helping you.
All right, that's our show. Unfortunately, Dave got knocked off. There's a big storm going on in Macon. We always get in Georgia, we always get the residue of any hurricane that comes through and hits Florida. We get the remnants of that, and I think that's what's happening. We're getting some really bad winds and rains. I think David mentioned in Macon there's been a power outage, so he won't be able to jump back on with us. But I appreciate David and Mike. I appreciate you guys jumping on the show and giving us this valuable information. And we look forward to having you back on the show again. Maybe we'll do a check-in and be able to have a parent or two from the organization come on and talk about how life-changing it's been for them.
That'd be good.
That'd be super fun. Dre, I'll also be really interested to once you have checked out the material, it would be really fun to come on and, see how your experiences and observations of it compare to Michael's and kind of what questions come up. I love the idea of having some parents on too. Any ideas you have would be really great. I'd love to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll definitely have to circle back. Maybe we'll plan about a month or 2 month check-in and see how it's going. Like I said, we're ready to jump in and get going. I like to attack this type of stuff, so this is going to be fun for me. But appreciate everyone watching tonight. That's our show. Next podcast will be Wednesdays. We have Voorhees Tiger Vision with Coach Cabral Huff on Wednesday. And then Thursday night is the Love of the Game podcast. We got a lot to cover on the Love of the Game. A lot of kids will get their name called, as we've watched a lot of team camps and had a chance to evaluate a lot of players. So You don't want to miss any of those shows for this week. That is all for Hoops Hidden Gems. We are signing off. You guys have a great night.
Thanks, you too.
Go now.